The morning on New Horizon Colony started like any other peaceful day. Soft golden sunlight spread across the terraformed landscape, where carefully planted trees and green fields stretched beyond the horizon. Children played near modular housing units, their laughter echoing through the quiet settlement. Jacques Park watched his daughter Hannah from the kitchen window. She was 6 years old, wearing a bright yellow jacket and running between rows of planted vegetables. Her small hands touched leaves, her curious eyes examining each plant with the intensity of a young explorer. Behind her, a robotic gardening unit moved slowly, monitoring crop health. Nearby, Yoon Kim reviewed colony defense reports on her digital tablet. As a former military intelligence specialist, she always maintained a vigilant attitude. Something about today felt different. The colony's early warning systems had been reporting unusual electromagnetic disturbances for the past 48 hours. Suddenly, a high-pitched electronic alarm broke the morning silence. Yoon's fingers flew across her tablet, her face turning pale as complex data streams revealed an incoming threat. Before she could react, the first plasma beam struck the colony's outer perimeter. The initial explosion was silent, then thunderously loud. Protective energy shields flickered and collapsed within seconds. Hannah, who had been picking a small tomato, looked up in confusion as the sky turned bright orange. Suk, who was rushing towards the window, watched in horror as massive alien warships descended from the atmosphere. These were not simple attack ships. They were massive technological marvels of the Galactic Empire, cold, precise, and utterly ruthless. Each vessel was larger than the entire human settlement, casting enormous shadows that blocked out the sunlight. Automated defense systems attempted to respond, but they were quickly overwhelmed. Robotic turrets exploded. Communication arrays disintegrated. The colony's carefully constructed infrastructure crumbled in minutes. Hannah stood frozen, her small frame illuminated by falling debris and explosions. Seok tried to reach her, but the building around him was collapsing. Yoon was already activating emergency protocols, her hands moving with military precision. "Protect the child," a computerized voice repeated in multiple communication channels. But it was too late. A precise energy beam, cold and calculated, struck exactly where Hannah stood. In an instant, everything she represented, hope, innocence, the future of human colonization, vanished. Seok's scream was lost in the massive explosion. Yoon's military training kept her moving, collecting critical data, preserving what could be saved. But inside, something fundamental had changed. The Galactic Empire had not just attacked a colony, they had murdered a child. In that moment, a silent promise was made. Not a promise of simple revenge, but of calculated, strategic response. Deep beneath the colony's burning remains, massive cryo chambers began to activate. These were no ordinary storage units. They contained something the galaxy had forgotten: human super soldiers, genetically enhanced warriors designed for extreme conditions. Seok, covered in dust and debris, touched a hidden communication panel. A series of complex codes were entered, not by his hands but through a neural interface embedded years ago. This was Protocol Thunderbolt, a last resort strategy known only to a select few. Around him, the remaining colonists were being evacuated. Rescue shuttles moved quickly, collecting survivors. But Seok and Yoon were not thinking about escape. They were thinking about response. The first cryochamber's seal broke with a soft hiss. Inside, a perfectly preserved human soldier began to stir. Advanced nanobots were already reconstructing muscle tissue, reactivating neural pathways. Outside, the Galactic Empire's ships continued their systematic destruction. They believed they had won. They believed humans were just another conquered species. They were wrong. In the burning remains of New Horizon Colony, the seeds of humanity's most sophisticated revenge were being planted, not through anger, but through cold, calculated strategy. The super soldiers were awakening. The first cryochamber hissed open, releasing a cloud of cold mist. Sergeant J. Choi's eyes flickered, electrical impulses racing through his enhanced neural network. His body, perfectly preserved for 30 years, began to move with mechanical precision. Around him, 12 other super soldiers started to awaken. Each was a product of advanced human genetic engineering. Not just soldiers, but living weapons designed to adapt and overcome. Their muscles rippled with synthetic fibers, their brains connected to complex computer systems that processed information faster than any standard human mind. Lieutenant Dae Kim was the second to fully activate. His hands moved across a nearby digital interface running diagnostic checks. 30 years of technological advancement had passed during their sleep, but their embedded systems quickly synchronized with current data networks. Colony status? Jay asked, his voice rough from decades of disuse. Dae's eyes flickered with digital readouts. Destroyed. Primary target confirmed. Galactic Empire responsible. The room was a marvel of technological preservation. Specialized medical nanobots had kept their bodies in perfect condition, preventing muscle decay and maintaining cellular integrity. Each soldier wore a specialized bodysuit that connected directly to their enhanced nervous system. Nearby computer systems began downloading massive amounts of historical data. The soldiers watched as 3 decades of human history played out in rapid succession. Colony expansions, political conflicts, technological breakthroughs. The Galactic Empire's systematic conquests became clear, revealing a pattern of calculated destruction. Jay walked to a weapons station. Advanced combat suits began assembling around his body, adaptive material shifting and connecting with his neural implants. Each movement was smooth, almost superhuman. The suit was more than protection. It was an extension of his enhanced physiology. Tactical assessment, he commanded. A holographic display emerged, showing multiple star systems, strategic points, and the Galactic Empire's known territories. Red markers indicated previous human colony destructions. Each marker represented lost lives, destroyed hopes. The super soldiers were not just a military unit. They were humanity's last strategic response, warriors designed to be more than traditional soldiers. Their training incorporated psychological warfare, advanced technological manipulation, and surgical precision. Dae reviewed communication logs. The colony's leadership activated emergency protocol. We are now operational. Jay's enhanced vision scanned the room. 12 perfect warriors, each representing years of secret genetic research. They were not simply soldiers. They were a message. A promise that humanity would not be easily conquered. Medical systems continued their work. Nanobots repaired minor cellular imperfections, enhanced muscle density, and synchronized their advanced neural networks. Each soldier's body was becoming a perfect instrument of strategic response. Mission parameters? Asked one of the younger soldiers. Jay's response was calm and calculated. Complete system disruption, psychological destabilization, strategic elimination of Galactic Empire's infrastructure. Their training had prepared them for this moment. Not just physical combat, but comprehensive warfare. They would target communication networks, economic systems, and psychological foundations. The Galactic Empire would not face an army. They would face a sophisticated, intelligent response. Computer systems continued downloading information. Historical records, military strategies, technological advancements, everything was being processed and analyzed simultaneously by their enhanced brains. Outside the cryo chamber, the world had changed. But these soldiers remained unchanged, a perfect weapon waiting to be unleashed. Jay touched a small memorial patch on his suit. It represented something more than just a military unit. It represented hope, revenge, the promise that humanity would not be forgotten. Prepare for deployment, he said quietly. The silent warriors were awake, and the Galactic Empire would soon understand the true meaning of strategic response. The room hummed with potential energy. 12 perfect soldiers, synchronized and ready, waiting for the moment to show the galaxy what humans could truly do when pushed to the edge. The first strike happened without warning. No massive explosions, no dramatic space battles, just precise calculated disruption. Jay's team moved like digital ghosts through the Galactic Empire's communication networks. Their advanced neural interfaces allowed them to infiltrate systems faster than any traditional computer hack. Each movement was calculated, each action designed to cause maximum strategic damage with minimum physical intervention. Lieutenant Dae Kim targeted the Empire's economic communication channels. With a few precise digital manipulations, he created cascading system failures that would look like normal technical glitches. Supply routes suddenly became confused. Trade agreements mysteriously disappeared. Financial transaction records became scrambled. On a distant frontier trading hub, merchants suddenly found their credit systems failing. Cargo ships discovered their navigation systems giving conflicting coordinates. What seemed like simple technical errors were actually carefully constructed disruptions. Sergeant Jay focused on military communication networks. Their infiltration was so subtle that standard detection systems couldn't recognize the intrusion. Communication encryption codes were slowly modified, creating micro-uncertainties that would spread like a virus through their entire system. The super soldiers did not attack physical targets. They attacked information. They attacked trust. A research station orbiting a distant moon suddenly lost all its research data. A military planning center found its strategic maps randomly shifting. Communication relays began sending conflicting messages between different Imperial sectors. Their enhanced brains processed millions of possible scenarios simultaneously. Each digital intervention was designed to create maximum psychological confusion without direct physical confrontation. Within 3 standard galactic weeks, the Galactic Empire's peripheral systems began experiencing unexplained disruptions. Nothing seemed directly attacked, but everything felt slightly wrong. Military commanders started questioning their own information streams. Economic planners couldn't explain sudden logistical complications. Day's most sophisticated attack involved creating subtle contradictions in the Empire's communication protocols. Messages would arrive slightly delayed, with microscopic information variations that were nearly undetectable, but psychologically destabilizing. Jay monitored their progress through a complex holographic interface. Each green marker represented a successfully disrupted system. The map looked calm, almost peaceful, but underneath, chaos was brewing. Their strategy was simple: make the enemy question everything without knowing they were under attack. On a distant Imperial administrative, planet government officials began experiencing strange communication breakdowns. Important messages would arrive with slight variations. Confidential reports would have microscopic inconsistencies. Nothing seemed majorly wrong, but trust began to erode. The super soldiers worked from a hidden base, their technology so advanced, it could bounce signals through multiple quantum relays, making their origin impossible to trace. They were everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Military supply chains started experiencing unexplained delays. Trade routes became subtly complicated. Economic transactions required additional verification. Each small disruption was designed to create maximum psychological uncertainty. Jay understood that physical destruction was temporary, but undermining an entire system's trust? That was a permanent strategy. Their attacks were not about killing. They were about delegitimizing, about showing the Galactic Empire that humanity could fight back in ways they never anticipated. One by one, Imperial systems began to question themselves, not through direct confrontation, but through subtle, persistent, digital manipulation. The super soldiers had become something more than traditional warriors. They were strategic ghosts, moving through information systems with surgical precision, and they were just getting started. The Galactic Empire would soon learn that humanity's response was not about destruction. It was about demonstrating a level of strategic intelligence that would redefine galactic conflict. Jay looked at his team. 12 perfect warriors, ready to continue their silent, precise war. No explosions, no dramatic battles, just pure, calculated, strategic intervention. The precision strike had begun. Admiral Seung Park studied the holographic displays, watching the subtle transformation happening across multiple star systems. The psychological war was advancing exactly as planned. The super soldiers had done more than disrupt systems. They had planted seeds of doubt within the Galactic Empire's complex social structures. Each digital intervention was carefully designed to create microscopic cracks in their organizational foundation. On the Imperial communication networks, strange patterns began emerging. Messages between different administrative sectors started showing slight inconsistencies. Military commanders received conflicting strategic reports. Economic planners noticed unexplained fluctuations in their standard tracking systems. Jay's team understood that true warfare happened in minds, not just battlefields. They targeted trust, the most fragile human emotion which was equally vulnerable in alien civilizations. Conquered races within the Galactic Empire began noticing something different. Communication channels that were once strictly controlled now showed unexpected variations. Information streams became less predictable. The Empire's usual tight control started showing unexpected weaknesses. Lieutenant Dae Kim discovered a fascinating psychological vulnerability. By introducing subtle contradictions in official communication protocols, he could create widespread uncertainty. Each message now carried a microscopic hint of potential misinformation. Imperial administrative centers started experiencing strange communication challenges. Important documents would arrive with minute variations. Confidential reports would have tiny, almost undetectable inconsistencies. Nothing seemed majorly wrong, but something felt different. The super soldiers were not attacking physical infrastructure. They were attacking psychological infrastructure. On distant colonial planets, subject races began questioning their imperial masters. Why were communication systems becoming unreliable? Why did official messages seem slightly different from previous standards? The seeds of doubt were carefully planted. Military intelligence units started internal investigations. Each investigation consumed resources, created tensions, and diverted attention from potential external threats. The super soldiers were creating organizational confusion without firing a single weapon. Seung Park watched the developing strategy with professional admiration. This was not traditional warfare. This was comprehensive system manipulation. Trade routes became complicated. Economic transactions required additional verification. Military supply chains experienced unexplained delays. Each small disruption was designed to create maximum psychological uncertainty. The Galactic Empire's subject races, who had been controlled through strict information management, now found themselves experiencing unexpected communication variations. Rumors started spreading. Discussions became more open. The rigid control structure began showing unexpected flexibility. Jay's team worked from a hidden quantum-shielded base, their technology so advanced it could bounce signals through multiple interdimensional relays. They were everywhere and nowhere, simultaneously. Their attacks targeted the Empire's most vulnerable resource, confidence in their own system. By creating persistent, subtle uncertainties, they were undermining the entire organizational structure. Alien administrative centers began experiencing communication challenges that defied standard diagnostic procedures. Normal troubleshooting methods became ineffective. Technical teams worked overtime, unable to identify the source of these mysterious disruptions. The psychological war was not about destruction, it was about demonstration. Humanity was showing the Galactic Empire that they could fight back using intelligence, strategy, and comprehensive system understanding. Military commanders started questioning their own information streams. Economic planners couldn't explain sudden logistical complications. Administrative centers found their standard protocols becoming increasingly unreliable. Seung Park understood the deeper strategy. By creating widespread uncertainty, they were preparing the ground for something more significant. The super soldiers were not just fighting, they were fundamentally transforming the conflict's landscape. Each digital intervention was a calculated move, designed to create maximum psychological impact with minimum physical intervention. The Galactic Empire would soon realize they were facing an enemy that understood warfare at a completely different level. The psychological war had transformed from a strategic approach to a comprehensive system manipulation. And humanity was just beginning to demonstrate its true potential. Jay looked at his team. 12 perfect warriors, ready to continue their silent, precise psychological intervention. No dramatic battles. No massive explosions. Just pure, calculated strategic intelligence. The real war was happening in minds, not battlefields. The final confrontation was not a battle. It was a systematic deconstruction. Jay and his team of 12 super soldiers had spent months carefully weakening the Galactic Empire's infrastructure. Now they would deliver the final blow, not through massive destruction, but through precise, calculated intervention. Admiral Shung Park coordinated from a hidden quantum communication center. Every move was calculated, every action designed to achieve maximum strategic impact. The super soldiers were no longer just a military unit. They were humanity's most sophisticated weapon. The Empire's leadership realized something was wrong when their entire communication network began to collapse, not through direct attack, but through a complex web of digital manipulations that made their systems increasingly unreliable. Day Kim's most sophisticated attack involved creating a cascading system failure that looked like a natural technological breakdown. Imperial communication centers found themselves unable to verify even the most basic information. Trust began to crumble from within. On multiple colonial planets, subject races that had been controlled for generations suddenly found themselves with unexpected access to information. The carefully constructed Imperial communication barriers were dissolving. Jay understood that true retribution was not about physical destruction. It was about systematic transformation. The first sign of complete system failure came when Imperial military commanders could no longer trust their own communication channels. Strategic reports became unreliable. Supply routes collapsed. Economic transactions became increasingly complicated. Seung Park watched as years of careful planning came to fruition. The super soldiers had not just attacked the Galactic Empire. They had systematically dismantled its entire operational structure. Alien administrative centers began experiencing total communication breakdown. What had started as small inconsistencies had grown into a comprehensive system failure. The Empire's rigid control structure was collapsing from within. On a distant memorial planet, a small white flower marked the spot where Hana had fallen years ago. The child whose death had started this entire mission was now symbolically avenged, not through violence, but through strategic intelligence. The super soldiers moved through digital spaces like ghosts, their enhanced neural networks processing millions of scenarios simultaneously. They were not just soldiers, they were living weapons of systemic transformation. Imperial leadership found themselves unable to communicate effectively. Military units received conflicting orders. Economic systems began to fragment. The carefully constructed galactic hierarchy was dissolving. Day's final intervention was subtle but devastating. He introduced a complex algorithm that made every Imperial communication system question its own reliability. Trust became the first casualty of this silent war. Jay understood that this was more than revenge. This was a demonstration of human potential. They were showing the galaxy that humanity could fight back in ways no one had anticipated. The collapse was not dramatic. It was systematic, precise, calculated. Subject races began to realize they could challenge their imperial masters. Communication barriers dissolved. Information became freely accessible. The Empire's control structure was completely dismantled. Seung Park watched the holographic displays, seeing years of careful planning come to perfect fruition. They had not just defeated an enemy. They had fundamentally transformed a galactic power structure. The super soldiers had become something more than warriors. They were architects of a new galactic understanding. As the final communication systems collapsed, a new possibility emerged. Not through violence, but through intelligent strategic intervention. The memorial for Hana stood as a silent reminder. A small white flower, representing the hope that had survived even the most devastating loss. Humanity had remembered. Humanity had responded. The Galactic Empire was no more. In its place, a new possibility had emerged. a possibility built on understanding strategic intelligence and the profound resilience of the human spirit. Jay looked at his team. 12 perfect warriors who had changed the course of galactic history, not through destruction, but through the most powerful weapon humanity possessed, its ability to think, adapt, and transform. The retribution was complete.